Hey Guru Nation, how's it going? I'm in my new office, just moved in, so the sound's not going to be ideal. The lighting's not ideal. I'm working on it, but I'm not stopping with these questions. I got a question from a viewer, and by the way, anybody can text me 949-415-6256. Hey Dan, I came across your videos on YouTube. Thank you so much. I was wondering if you had anything related to study startup activation and recruitment. So let me just explain the scenario they were given. As a study manager, you manage a 5-site study that just achieved FPFV, which is first patient, first visit. Your line manager has just informed you that you are needed immediately to take on an additional study from another study manager who resigned. The study is a mid-sized phase 3 study and is currently 2 months behind in study and site startup. There are multiple countries involved. What are your first steps? What actions would you consider essential in managing your new study effectively? So let's go one by one with these questions. So you've just been assigned a new study as a study manager. They're 2 months behind in study startup, in the study and site startup. So the first steps would be to get these sites activated. I mean, figure out, if I were the study manager, I personally would call the site to find out what's going on. What's the holdup? Why are we not activated? Usually there's issues with the startup regulatory. Sometimes there's delays in the contracts and budgets. Other times the CRA hasn't actually gone to the site to do the SIV yet, which is the site initiation visit. I'm assuming the site selection visits have been completed. So those are usually the holdups. The bottlenecks are usually study startup documents, so regulatory startup, so the 1572, the IRB approval, financial disclosure forms, getting the lab kits, getting the drug, getting the protocol, doing the EDC training, getting access to the EDC, all the other vendors, IWRS, maybe the ECG vendor, maybe any electronic patient reported outcomes vendors. All those things need to be done. IRB approval needs to be done. And that's regulatory startup. Okay, then you have contract and budget, which usually is a different person at the site handling that. Sometimes it's the same individual, but usually it's a separate person doing the regulatory, doing the regulatory from doing the contract and budget. So sometimes there might be a delay there. And other times, all that stuff is done or is being worked on, but the CRA hasn't scheduled a site initiation visit. And you know that a site cannot start screening patients until the SIV, the site initiation visit, is done. So if I were you on your first day on the job, I would find out which sites haven't been activated yet, which sites have, so you at least don't need to worry about those sites. Maybe with those sites you can figure out why they haven't started screening yet, or what's the issue with them screening. The sites that haven't been activated are the ones costing the sponsor a lot of money. I think the last stat I read was it cost the average sponsor $1 million a day to run a clinical trial, just run one clinical trial. So those would be essential. Find out what's holding up the startup delay, what's holding up the activation delay. The other question is, what actions would you consider essential in managing your new study effectively? So there's different issues to managing a study. As you're aware, the activation issue is the first issue you got to deal with. Once all sites are activated, now you got to deal with recruiting. Are the sites recruiting on time? Are they recruiting per schedule? If not, here's a hint, 90% of the time sites are behind on enrollment. You need to come up with solutions. Can you employ a central ad campaign? Is there a vendor that you can hire to start doing the advertising for the sites, central advertising for the sites? Are the sites doing everything they can to recruit patients from their database? Do the sites need help recruiting. Sometimes they need to use a budget or they need to have a budget for advertising if there's no central ad campaign. Those are the things, those are the challenges after activation. Prior to activation, obviously the challenges, the most immediate, most pressing challenges are getting the site activated. What other actions would you start in order to accelerate startup and enrollment to bring study back on track within original timelines? So here you can throw in also booster visits maybe for the sites that have been activated for a while but haven't screened anyone yet. Maybe you can do a booster visit where you send a CRA to the site, and guess what? If you don't have that, you as the study manager, that's your responsibility. You might have to go out there and do a booster visit, but basically problem solving with the site. Every site's going to have different issues. One site, maybe the coordinator has so much work going on that they haven't even had time to go through the database and see who qualifies from their own site database for the study. So you might need to recommend to the PI that they hire or they use one of their medical assistants to start doing the pre-screening activities. Another site, they may not have the database or they may have exhausted their database. So now your role is to go in there and say, okay, well, what have other sites done? What has worked well from other sites? What best practices have worked well from other sites so that you can kind of duplicate those tactics? Maybe they're running Facebook ads. Maybe try to find out who's their vendor that they're using. Again, this is if there is no central vendor. So those are some of the things I would do. Although I've learned a ton about the various stages for startup from your videos, I'm having a hard time putting it together for this scenario. Hopefully this helps. There's a lot, those are the like 80%. That's the 20% you need to know to be 80% effective in this area, and I'm trying to keep this video short. So anyways, thank you guys so much. Text me 949-415-6256